All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to the show. This one is pretty special. I'm Wright, he's Todd Simmons, and we are Two Nights and a Mic, the podcast where we explore life, leadership in order to help you become the best version of yourselves. This podcast is brought to you by Columbia Southern University, so if you want more information on furthering your educational goals, look us up at www.columbiasouthern.edu. What a treat we have for you today. Edgar Jones is a former NFL linebacker turned speaker, coach, and the founder of the Lit Code, a platform dedicated to helping people unlock their purpose and live with intention. He carved out a 7-year NFL career with the Baltimore Ravens, Kansas City Chiefs, and the Dallas Cowboys, earning a reputation for grit, leadership, and relentless work ethic. After football, Edgar transitioned into a new mission, empowering others. Through the Lit Code, he delivers keynotes, workshops, and mentorship rooted in faith, mindset, and personal growth. We are super excited to have him with us today to share some wisdom and insight. Edgar, it's an honor, my friend. Welcome to the show.
Man, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be in the presence of two great men. Had a chance to talk to Mr. Simmons quite a bit and enjoyed his story and learning from him. And Wright, I know this is the first time we've had a chance to interact with each other, but I've listened to previous podcasts and just listened to the wisdom that you've shared. And I look forward to learning and having further conversations with you. So thank you for having this guy.
Yeah, man, we appreciate it. It's pretty exciting to have you here with us. You're actually our very first official guest for Two Nights and a Mic. So with that, yeah, let's just jump right in.
Yeah,
sounds good.
Let's jump right in. Hey, Edgar, appreciate you, just like Wright said, coming on. You know, I've had a lot of interaction with you, and I think it's going to be a treat for a lot of our listeners to hear you. But I wanted to jump in with a question. First of all, I heard Wright when he was going through the teams that you played with. He said the first few teams, and then he got to the Cowboys, and it was like this little bit of a pause, and he wanted to kind of get his body right, and he wanted to kind of emphasize and the Dallas Cowboys. So if you ever,
hey man, I'm done with the Cowboys, man. Look, I done gave up on them jokers.
I can elaborate on them jokers if you would like now.
Oh man, I know you can, but I've been a fan for 35, 45 years, man, and I just had enough, man. I can't take it no more.
Yeah. You know what, man? Your strength can be your kryptonite. What has allowed us to be successful in life, if not careful, that can turn into your kryptonite. So when I got to that organization, being able to see from a standpoint of what the owner has done from a business level, as far as what he's built, like owning restaurants, land, etc., I saw that spill over a lot into the football locker room. And when you bring that over into the locker room, and it has to be in a mindset of it's your way, what you end up doing to people is you communicate to them that their part doesn't matter and what they bring doesn't matter. So an example would be like, head coach would get up and give a great message. And then right after that, the owner would come in and give the same message. And I'd be like, wait a minute, whose team is this, right? Like, whose team is this right now? And if you want to look at one way to get people disengaged and communicate to them that their talents and their expertise that they bring doesn't matter, and that is if you're always coming in trying to one-up them every time they do what they do. And that's what I had a chance to witness at that organization. And that was the big difference in that organization and other organizations that continue to perform at a high level.
Yeah.
Man, go ahead, correct.
I was just going to say that would be a huge red flag. Obviously, Todd and I both come from military backgrounds, and we've done extensive work in corporate and in nonprofit and other spaces. And having that kind of dissonance, I would say, at the highest level of leadership, man, would be a huge red flag. And you see how lots of failures could come from an organization like that.
And then people start to talk. Right? After that meeting, after that happened, when they started to go back down the hallways, they started going to the lunchroom, it starts to turn into gossip, but it starts to turn into more of conversations that happen. And before you know it, this Mo has turned into Spike. He the gremlin. Now you have this ripple effect of your culture that started to be impacted in a negative way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Man, we went right. You know what? I threw caution to the wind, and I mentioned the Cowboys, and I was like, now we done sparked. We done went all the way on like question 18 in the podcast right off the bat. But we don't give you a chance and the listeners to kind of dig into a little bit of your background. So
Yeah.
we'll get to a question. So we talked about a little bit of your background in the intro, but you made it to the NFL as an undrafted free agent. What was it like grinding for a dream that did not come easy to make it into one of those teams that you did, behind you? What was it like? What was that history before that people don't always see behind the veil, the work, the effort? So give us a little background about Edgar Jones, how you came to be.
So what happened in the NFL was only an extension of my upbringing and where I come from. I come from a town where the population is 20 chickens and 5 eggs. Rayville, Louisiana. I grew up fishing, hunting, driving tractors, playing football, bell in hand, going to church. So at a young age, growing up in the farm life, you understand that just because you put something in, you may not always get it back out. In farming, I mean, you can till and plant all day long, but you may not get it in the moment. However, if you continue to be consistent at it, you'll start to be able to see the fruits of that labor. And that was something I saw not just in the farming community, but with my mama and my daddy, my grandmother, my aunties, and my uncles. So I understood at an early age, one, the importance of work ethic in everything you do. Don't disrespect your craft by not giving everything to it. And then number two, I remember a point in time where we just didn't have a lot to eat. And I would watch my grandmother and my mama go into that kitchen and look in that pantry. And man, they'll come back with some meals. They didn't have none of the ingredients that you would think they should have for that meal. So I watched number two, man, these folks knew how to work with what they had. And for me, I understood work ethic. My faith is extremely important to me. And then the other thing is being able to work with what you got and doubling down on that. And that played a part in my journey from growing up and going into college. And then as I got into the NFL.
Man, I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like you say, I was looking at a lot of things before we came in, a lot of our conversations, and I think there's so much parallels with anyone there. People typically see the finished product. Behind you is all these signed footballs, all these helmets, and all of these things. It goes back to something K-Wright came up with in the Air Force, that used to call it every airman has a story, but I think every human has a story, right?
Every human
has that story. I laughed. I think K-Wright and I both laughed at the same time because, man, my wife and I are from different parts of the country, right? She grew up in Mexico. I grew up in South Carolina. Same thing, rural town, right? And you talk about making those meals, and I was giving her some of the things that I used. Like, you ever ate Kool-Aid bread? I was asking her one day. She was like, "What is Kool-Aid bread?" I'm like, "That's dessert. Take some light bread and you dip it in the Kool-Aid."
You dip it in the Kool-Aid. That's dessert. That's a whole meal right there in itself. So you're right. And give a little bit more context to it. I went into the NFL. My signing bonus was $250. That's 1,000 quarters. We just let that sit for a little bit in that crock pot. So it wasn't like I was the poster boy going into the NFL. As a matter of fact, my jersey was 64 as an outside linebacker. And when you look at that on paper, that's not your ideal number for outside linebacker. That's not a jersey you find in Academy Sports. And I remember when I made the team, they brought 30 undrafted free agents in, and the head coach at the time, Brian Billick, was like, "Hey, only one of y'all are going to make this team." And I ended up being the one that made it. And I remember when I made the team, I switched numbers. I went to number 91. And I asked the equipment guy, like, "Why did y'all give me 64? And he said, "Honestly, we didn't expect for you to be here long at all. We expect for you to be here for 2 weeks."
Yeah.
But when I look back on my journey through the NFL, it had always been the 64 story. most people don't show up as the poster boy. They don't show up as the highlight of the big picture. And when I find time to talk, back to your point, Todd, of being able to talk to people from different walks of life, you find that they got a very powerful story. They got the 64 underdog story. They got the 64 journey of having to navigate through this and go through this and deal with this situation.
Yeah, man, I think that's pretty powerful. Now, I think most people are probably wondering, are are more athletes like the Shedeur Sanders, and even though we all kind of understand he got a raw deal here, but are most athletes, do they come in drafted, or are there more athletes like yourself that are undrafted that have to really put that work ethic to the test, that are underdogs? Like, what from a peer standpoint, what's your perspective?
There's more that's in that perspective of undrafted or being drafted on a lower level. So when you start to get into like that fifth round, that sixth, that seventh round, I think Shedeur was like fifth round, seventh round, then you get into the undrafted. The room for error is so small. And the NFL is a business. It took me a while to learn that. I had to really start looking at that as a business. And I had a mentor who's a former player say that to me, because the job of scouts in the NFL is to go out and find talent just like a recruiter in a corporation. And they're always looking for who can I get possibly at a lower cost. So if I can get 2, 6 or 7 round guys for this price point, and I can replace this guy over here I'm paying millions and millions of dollars, then I'm going to go pick these two. So when you approach it from a standpoint of fifth, 6th, 7th round, the room for error is so small because they're always looking to replace you.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I can remember vividly when I would make a mistake in a game on Sunday, the scout's job was to go out and go find talent. So I can remember walking down the hallway and they would have 4 or 5 other linebackers that's not playing for a team. They're about to get ready to work them out. And I can remember a scout saying to me, hey, if you don't do your job and start making plays, these guys we just came to work out, they're going to be replacing you. And that pressure,
Yeah.
it's something else. So it is a lot of individuals that fall in that pool of, man, I have very little room for error, and I have to do my job at a high level.
What's the thing that you think makes the difference, right? So lots of guys, like you said, fall into your category, undrafted. They gotta dig it out of the mud. What's the difference, in your opinion, from a guy like yourself that comes from, we all come from kind of the same background, growing up eating whatever we can, syrup sandwiches, mustard sandwiches, and cover. But what makes a difference in you being able to break through versus other guys who may come from the same background that didn't make it?
I would say one is when you look at, even though me and this guy came from the same background, he probably goes higher drafted. And he's been at this big organization throughout his time in college. And he's been used to having things somewhat kind of catered and given to him. If you went to like the University of Miami, the University of Ohio, I went to Southeast Missouri State, a 1AA school, very, very small school. So what ends up happening is they're so used to getting everything that they can somewhat forget what it means to go work for things. And it's not, they started off that way, but then they get that light on them and being that big star, and then they get to a place they get complacent. They forget that what got them here is the thing that will continue to keep you in this space. So then when they get to the NFL and they arrive at the same time I arrive, and they're the higher pick and I'm the lower pick, then they get what I call is adversity. Maybe it's an injury, maybe they go from first team and they go down to third team or second team, so they're not getting that attention, and then they don't know how to quite bounce back from that. Well, guys such as myself, I mean, like high school, college. Like I'm just used to dealing with that all the time. So I know how to respond to that.
Yeah, man, that's powerful. You said publicly that your purpose didn't begin and end on the field. So when did you start to realize that football wasn't your whole identity?
Well, the seeds was planted when I was playing. I had a guy that was getting ready to retire when I first was coming in. And the one thing he said to me was, find you a mentor. And the question I asked him, I was like, what do you look for when you're looking for a mentor? Man, it sounds great, but like, what am I looking for? And he said, look at somebody that's obeying the message they speak about. He said, because when you're not living a message you speak about, you confuse people.
Mhm.
It's like a weight room coach telling people to go to the gym and go work out, but like they eating chicken nuggets and drinking a vanilla milkshake. Not that I got anything wrong with that, but you confuse people. So I saw gentlemen and players that were living what they were speaking about. Like they really live that life when no one is watching. Even when they didn't think no one was watching, they actually were living that life. So when I saw that, I went up to him and was like, hey man, a lot of respect for you. I just would like to know if you would be my mentor. And a lot of them end up accepting it and doing
Mhm.
it. And that wasn't just players that played, but it was people that was not attached to football. I'm big on third parties. And these
Mhm.
were gentlemen that were in business that were very successful that would always say, hey, Edgar, it's more to you than just football. Now, they planted the seed, they watered it, but I still didn't know what it looked like. But they started kind of sparking the thought a little bit in the back of my head, like, man, what does this really look like? And I would call those individuals rumble strips in my life. You know, rumble strips are those things that's on the highway that when you
Mm.
drift off, you get that that
Got
vibration in your steering wheel. So they just got me back on track. So those were men and women that were attached to the organization, but also some of those didn't have any relationships with the organization at all. They just cared about the person behind the helmet, not who would put the helmet on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Man,
that's a real powerful message right there, man, because most of us now Todd and I have been through, we've been mentors and we've been mentored for many, many years. And I came to a realization a long time ago that you don't have to be in my craft to be a good mentor. So sometimes people get stuck, in your case, looking for a football player to be a mentor. And I
Mhm.
think it's a powerful message that you relay, that you can be outside of the craft that I'm in and still be a good mentor to me. So man, good on you for that.
And I still have to apply that. I have to be careful of like Edgar. Yes, the athletes, the connections, being able to get on the phone with those guys that's now coaching. We have some amazing conversations that allow me to continue to show up and do what I do at a high level. Ever, we always talk about traveling to different waters and going to different places. But one way you can do that is by seeing out of the eyes of another from perspectives. And perspectives that it's not attached to the football helmet or it's not connected to the football or the jersey.
man, you're speaking so much of my language right now. You're talking about seeing out of the eyes of another. That's that empathetic mindset right
Mhm.
there. And I'm telling you, what you just dropped, we always talk about people dropping gems and, man, you dropped a diamond mine when you said, I mean, I felt that when you said, when you said people are examples of what they speak. And I want you, well, what exactly quotation did you use on that? When you were looking for a mentor,
Look
you said, look,
look for someone who lives the message they speak about.
lives the message they speak, man. I want to recap that for a second because I think, the environment that, I served most of my life in, that's not necessarily. Sometimes people are looking for someone that they just want to achieve a thing from, right? I'm in this position. I want to be, or you see someone wealthy, you just want to be wealthy, but you just don't want to be wealthy because that person is wealthy, that kind of wealthy. That person may not have the values and the morals that align with you.
Right.
So I think that is so purposeful. It's something I actually um, believe in deeply. So when you said that, it kind of pierced my soul about, not just having these transactional, but transformational
Mhm.
relationship with people where you can actually feel the exchange of energy of two human beings. And that's what really I think a mentee mentor relationship is. I believe in you because I believe and see what you're doing. So, man, you
Yeah,
dropped a,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you got to step back and fade away jumper on that one.
yeah.
Mamba
Hey,
mentality,
I,
man. That's what came to mind for me. What immediately was the Mamba mentality, right? Because
yeah,
that's what people speak about
yeah,
when they
yeah.
speak about Kobe Bryant. But I'm sorry, Edgar. Go ahead, brother.
Man, I appreciate you all sharing that. I also say that from a standpoint of living a life in the past where I wasn't living what I was speaking about. And you want to talk about a restless night of sleep, a restless night of not getting sleep. Well,
Yeah.
you're not doing what you've spoken about. And I did that at one point in time in my life. And someone asked me the other day, they was like, man, what's the hardest thing that you've had to navigate through? And I said, it's something I deal with every day, and it's living the message I speak about and having that authenticity when I show up that, hey, man, I'm not exempt for what I'm talking about. And I'm automatically giving you permission in anything I speak about. You can ask me that question, Edgar, how do you do this? And as I'm putting messages together, Todd, as you know, as I get ready to put some content up, man, when I'm writing it, I'm looking at it, the first question I'm asking myself is, hey, homeboy, are you doing
Or you, or,
are you doing this?
you're like,
Are you,
you're
are you,
looking in
Are
the
you
mirror real
doing
quick.
this?
Like,
Yeah, and
are
think
you
about
living your
this.
creed? Yeah.
Think about how many times you've had somebody get in front of you that's spoken to about something, and you say to yourself in the back of your head, even if you didn't say it to someone else, you say, man, they ain't doing that.
Yeah.
They ain't doing that.
Oh
Oh,
man.
oh, yeah, whatever. So this is for me. This is for me more than it's for anybody. It's for me. I gotta apply this.
I got a funny story about that. One time there was this guy, and there was about 600 people in the audience, and he stood up and said, the way you should live your life is you should have a 2, 4, 7, 10 model. And he was like, you should like do this 2 hours a day. You could do this 4 hours a day. And I was sitting like 10 rows back, and I was looking at this person I knew a little bit at this point, and I was like, you don't do that.
Yeah. And Todd, I'm glad you brought that up, man. Edgar, he was talking about me, right? So I was running this large organization, man, and I was up preaching about, it was really about time management, how to manage your time and stuff.
Yeah.
And I did it for probably close to a year, saying it but not doing it. But that I did later come back and say publicly, like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna stop saying this stuff because
Yeah.
I'm not living it, right?
Yeah.
And I had to really apologize, not just to the people around me, but to all the people that I was serving. Like, hey, I'm saying this stuff, but I'm not doing it. Now I eventually got to a better place, but yeah, you're right, man. That's a tough thing to come to the realization that you preaching a message that you're not living.
Yeah. Kara, let me ask you a question to that. Like, what was the moment that you realized like I needed to come out and say something? Or did someone say something to you, or you driving down the highway and you just had like, all right, I need to go speak about this?
No, I think it came over time, right? It was a combination of people like Todd saying to me, hey, man, you need to stop delivering that message because you're not really living it. And then me actually thinking about it, right? Because I was doing it on such a regular basis. I was standing up so often, preaching this message. And like you said, deep down, man, I was going home every night, not getting any sleep, not taking time for family, not doing really any of the things that I was preaching about. And it really started kind of wearing on me that, man, I'm being inauthentic,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm not being myself by continuing to get up and deliver this message. And it kind of, between feedback from friends like Todd and the guilt that I was feeling about it, is really what made me say, I'm gonna come clean with this and just be honest about, what I'm doing and what I'm not doing.
And I would say that's authenticity, to live in a way that helps you sleep well at night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Even if you made a decision, you like, man, maybe I had to let this person go, but you went through talking and seeking counsel on it. You tried to look at over time, like, what did their performance look like? You had conversations with them, or maybe one of your reports had conversations with them. You did everything you possibly could. It still hurts because you're human.
Yeah.
And I look at authenticity of living in a way that helps you sleep well at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, brother.
Yeah, I tell you, I had to mess with K Wright about that, but I appreciate your response, K Wright. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
It
for
was
real.
I mean, and I would tell you something. He's being modest. He said he ran a large organization. I'm sure he Googled him, but he was top enlisted guy in the Air Force. And I was telling that which no one can understand the pressures of a job like that, unless you're the person in that position, right? Which has been few folks.
Yeah.
So, one thing I appreciate about Kerr all the time, if he said something and then he needed to say something else later in front of, essentially a million people may hear this message. It was never, and that's what we're talking about, those type of authentic leaders. I think this is a great time to pivot into, what exactly we're talking about for you, Edgar, like that defining moment. What was that defining moment you can think of, whether it was in the league or after you left the league, that you knew it was time to pivot into who Edgar Jones is today all over the place?
I want to make sure I'm answering this question. When did I know it was time for me to pivot out the league?
Yep, and go to
Yep.
a different path.
Yeah. December the 1st is actually my birthday. And I've had a lot of amazing birthdays, but December the 1st, 2012 wasn't a great birthday. My teammate shot and killed himself on my birthday. And I actually was at the facility when it happened. I was playing with the Kansas City Chiefs. And not only that, but he took his girlfriend's life as well. And I remember how all of everything that got handled afterwards. And it just really stirs something inside of me of this is not for me anymore, the game of football. That played a big part. And then two, I was disrespecting my craft by not showing up and giving my all. After that tragic event, and then when I started to watch myself on film, I was not showing up at 64, the underdog story. 64. Going back to my background growing up, as I stated to you gentlemen earlier, I was raised, hey man, you give your all into whatever you do. So those were the two things. And I started to seek and talk to some mentors. They was like, hey man, you kind of talking like it's time to walk away from this thing, but hey, just continue to try to push through it. And I continued to go for about a year and a half. And I remember when I finished with the Cowboys, the New Orleans Saints brought me in for a workout. And how it works is if you're not with a team, teams can reach out to you to bring you in for a workout. Well, they brought me in for a workout, and after I was done, I needed to wait it to hear from them to see if they wanted to sign me. Well, they called my agent, and my agent called me and was like, hey, I think the Saints want to sign you. And man, I was sitting at a bar drinking a Grand Marnier at 12 o'clock in the middle of the day on a Thursday. And I was like, man, something wrong. And I told my agent, I was like, hey, I done had enough. I'm done. He's like, what you mean you done? I'm like, I'm done. He was like, man, I need for you to think about this. I'm like, listen, there's a difference between thinking and being thoughtful. And I'd have been thoughtful about this long enough and it's time to walk away. So I ended up retiring just like that, walked away. We got back settled in Dallas. And then along that journey, when I got out, people wanted to always know more about my story in football and about my background. And they will always have questions. And I remember growing up as a kid, anytime a relative or a family member or somebody in the neighborhood, they would always tell stories. And anytime they would tell stories, they would always bring it back to who they were telling the story to. So when people would ask me about my journey after football or what that was like, I would always find a way to bring it back to the audience. And then I would have people say stuff to me like, hey, dude, you need to really look into getting into speaking because you can tell great stories and you always bring it back to the audience to get them to reflect on their lives. And then that's when I went down the journey of exploring more of storytelling, the art of speaking, exploring more of coaching as well. And one of the things I wanted to do when I got involved in a space of speaking and coaching, when I started to get certified in it and take courses, I wanted to remove my past experience and what I had accomplished and just come into this as if I knew nothing. Because sometimes we can let that get in the way about like what we've accomplished. We like, man, like I'm coming into this and and I'm like, hey man, just, as Biggie said, treat every day like your first day. Biggie said that.
Yeah.
Like, just treat it like you don't know anything. So when I went into it, I treated speaking and coaching as if I knew nothing. Let me just start all the way from the ground, from the beginning stages of it. And then also too, I had a chance to work alongside corporations. When I got out, I sat down for a little bit, but I also believed in what's the next mountain I want to go climb and how can I put myself in an environment where I'm gonna be uncomfortable and I don't know a lot. And that was me working alongside other companies. And even during that time when I was working a lot alongside of them, I realized that the complaints they were having was the same complaints that happened in the NFL locker room. And then they also wanted to learn more about my background. I was coming in to learn from them, and they was asking me questions about like, man, how do the best teams continue to perform at our level? So I realized like, Edgar, that's a lane right there. Now, how do we get our mind focused on this and go dive more into exploring what this looks like?
Yeah. That's such a powerful, like Todd said, man, you're dropping so many gems because I think most people, they rely so heavily on their background and previous experience and aren't always open to being lifelong students, being a lifelong learner, always being in a position to learn and grow because they already know so much. See, you don't understand back in my day or when I was in the NFL or when I was in the Air Force or when I was this position. And so man, I think that's a really powerful position to be in is being open to learning, all the time. I think both Todd and I have worked really hard to, no, you can't ever forget where you came from, right? You can't forget your background and most people won't allow you to forget it, if we're being honest, right? You'll always be Edgar Jones from the NFL. We'll always be Todd and K Wright from the Air Force. But I think we work pretty hard to be in a position of learning and growing and not depending so heavily on, what we did in the past. So man, we really applaud you on that too, brother.
I appreciate
Yeah.
it. Thank you, John.
That
Yeah.
was another 3-pointer from way out. I'm telling you, what K Wright just said, and in the military, in the Air Force particularly, the lowest rank you can have is an airman basic. That's an E1. That's the lowest you can absolutely be, and the highest you can be on the enlisted side is E9. And when I talk to a lot to veteran entrepreneurs, and I wanted to make this point because I thought, Edgar, what you said was so how you show up every day. When a veteran entrepreneur talks to me about being an entrepreneur and had a successful military career,
Mm-hmm.
what I try to visualize for them and what I told them was any semblance of a success that I've had in this space is I show up to every opportunity as an airman basic.
Mm-hmm.
And and when we are airman basics in the military, we are in 100% learning mode. When we go to basic military training, they teach us how to fold t-shirts, your underwear, how to cut your hair, how to shave. But you're in receive, 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 receive. Nothing really ever gets in your brain to start asking a ton of questions of questioning anything or have this kind of machismo like I come from this.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you come in the military with you have worked and you were 27 years old and you had all of this. Still, if you come in an airman basic, you're still in a learning mode. So something I always try to walk around as, even when I'm in any room, even if it's in a military room today, even though I was in the military for 25 years, I try to walk in the room like I know nothing about it. And I heard you say the same thing. And I think that's such powerful something to bring on both sides that this isn't just us talking from prior military. This is the way the world operates for successful people. And I appreciate you bringing that home because I think that's such an important point. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you as well. Two questions I ask myself every day. First one is, where am I wrong? I'm wrong somewhere. I'm human. We flawed. So I'm wrong somewhere in my personal life, or I'm wrong somewhere in my professional life. And then the second question is, where am I assuming? Where am I assuming something maybe about someone, and who do I need to go talk to, or what conversation do I need to go have that gives me better clarity? Imagine who we could become if we approach our days looking out of the lens of where am I wrong at and where am I assuming?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I think the and this question might be a spinoff of those two questions, but a third question I would add is, how can I be better tomorrow? Right. I've assessed where I've gone wrong today. I've assessed where I've assumed something today, and then the third part is, now how can I be a little bit better tomorrow? One of the things that it sounds like to me, Edgar, it was pretty seamless, and at least that's how it sounds, right? And you really discovering your purpose. And I know with Lit, you work a lot on helping people unlock purpose. Why do you think so many people struggle with finding their purpose in life?
I'll start with myself, and hopefully out of this can give you an answer to your question. Because for quite some time, I brought into someone else's story and who I should be rather than who does Edgar Jones want to be. I kept buying into the story of, you need to be this athlete, you need to be this athlete, you need to be this athlete, rather than taking the time to really dive more deep into how does Edgar Jones want to show up and who is it that Edgar wants to be. And that ties back to having the mentors that push me to go far beyond just the help and the football, because for quite some time I brought into the story of just, man, I'm an athlete. I play ball. That's it. We're going to talk about ball. And they're like, nah, nope. There's more to you, Edgar. Now they wouldn't, I think this is, I know this is great coaching, because great coaching is to not tell you the answers. It's to spark the thought to get you to figure it out, to go on your own journey. And that's what they did. They sparked the thought to get me to start really looking at, what does this actually look like for myself? So buying into someone else's story, and also to getting wrapped up in the identity of the background and where I come from and the labels that people have tried to put on me, and trying to run somebody else's race. You can't compare F-250 to a BMW.
Yeah.
So you got people that's built like BMWs, but they trying to run like an F-250. And those are two totally different vehicles. So figuring out, like, in my BMW of who I am, like what are the gifts and the talents that's been given to me that I can go out to go serve, that I can go serve people. So running someone else's race, trying to be a F-250 when you're a BMW or vice versa. And then I also look at, and this ties into the F-250 and BMW, is you got to be careful of not trying. It's okay to admire something that someone does, but not trying to actually be them. Like, our coach used to make us study tons of film. Now, one of the reasons of film study is to really be able to look at yourself. It's like to be able to examine and look at yourself, but also the second part was to go be able to look at another player that did something really, really well. And he would always say, take a little bit, don't try to take it all. Because if you're going to compare anything, compare everything. To look at. So what I would do is, when I would watch film on other players, I would say, man, what's the one thing they do really, really well? And then how can I add that to like what I do? But I'm still going to show up as Edgar and offer what I do really, really, really well. And at times we look at people and we say, I got to go do exactly everything they did. And to me, now you're getting back on the track of like not being authentic to yourself and how you've been created to be.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answered your question.
It did, man. I'll let Todd jump in on that. Our very first podcast together was called Run Your Own Race. And it was about that exact thing, about, people trying to emulate, others, as opposed to discovering their purpose, doing what it is that they were meant to do in life. So
Run Your Own Race was the name of it?
Run Your Own Race. Yeah.
And think about this. Y'all will understand this in a race, or when you running or you moving, the most important thing you need to have is a map.
Mm-hmm.
And if I got a map, I can be wrong, but I'm never lost.
True.
And one of the most important things on the map is man, where am I currently at right now? Like, where are we at on this map? Because if we look at where we're trying to go, if I'm starting in my car, I first need to look at on the map of currently where am I at? And where am I at is what am I doing well? What am I struggling at? What's some things I do really, really well that nobody can do it the way I can do it? And understanding when you run in your race, my race may look different from Todd's. I may be doing a mall walk and Todd doing a sprint. But there's different ways that we can get there on the journey.
So what's your secret when you're coaching and mentoring to helping people unlock their purpose? So if somebody comes to you, you're coaching them. That the typical answer when you say, "Hey, what is it that you want to do in life? What is it that you want to be? What's your next thing after you transition from this career, that career?" And a lot of people, from my experience as a coach, as a mentor, is, I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. I don't know and they always say, even though these are fully grown adults, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Right. What's the
So,
key to, yeah.
so to make sure I'm hearing you correctly, if they come to me and they're saying like, "Hey, I don't know what I want to do,"
Because they haven't found their purpose.
right, I would first start off by saying, well, if you don't know what you want, what do you not want?
Mhm.
Man, I went to a restaurant a while back ago and I was hungry, and that waiter came out and brought me a menu. And after I looked through the menu, I said, what would you recommend? He's like, "Man, we got Caesar salad." I was like, "I don't want no salads. I don't want any salads. No salads. We ain't gonna do that." He was like, "All right, then. Well, I ain't gonna talk about no more salads." And then we started talking about other things. Right then and there, I let that waiter know that I don't want salads. I don't like no salads. Don't give me that. They be like, "Edgar, how you play the league? You eat no salad?" I just don't want salads. Don't bring it to me. So when we get with each other, gentlemen, don't bring the salad out. I ain't eating that. So I
Right.
share that
Yeah.
because most of the time when it comes to what we want and what we don't want, people can tell you fast what they don't want anymore in life. And
Mm.
I'll look at that process of elimination, because if we're talking about growth and what you want to accomplish, that's just look at what do we subtract? What do you not want in anymore in life? And typically when I have started and when I'm working with individuals, if they come to me and saying like, "I don't know what I want," well, let's start with what you don't want anymore. What do you not want in your relationships? What do you not want in your finances? What do you not want in your job anymore? And typically as they start to work through that by writing it down, it starts to give the aha moment of what do I really want more of now?
Yeah, I like it, man. I've been coaching for a long time and never really, even though I think I've maybe toyed around with that conversation, man. That is a really powerful place to start with. What is it that you don't want? So, man, thank you again. Another gem, brother.
I appreciate
Yeah.
it. Thank y'all.
Another gem. Hey, I want to transition into, I can stay all day on that purpose, on that conversation. Matter of fact, I mean, it was that last segment was so profound. I think we'll get a lot out of that in terms of the audience. But we met, Edgar. I'm just sitting here trying to place maybe 4 or 5 months ago, if that long.
Yep.
So we met 4 or 5 months ago through a mutual friend who said, "You have to meet this guy, Edgar Jones," and connected us on LinkedIn. Now that happens a lot, right? I think with all of us, that happens a lot. Sometimes relationship flourishes and sometimes you don't ever hear from the person, whatever. But something K right now, I don't think we've ever defined what it was called, but I think over the years we've seen, we're in a fairly large men friend group, something that, fairly large, mostly guys that served in the military. And we've had a couple of moments where we can call it, healthy masculinity, where barriers of which you typically see men hold up, and I have to hold all this on my shoulders, and I don't need to be vulnerable in front of my brother because it may make me look weak or whatever. We've had a couple of those instances where that has shedded away and some very powerful moments. And I think, they only were a few, but they were very powerful moments that I think we can both say that really redefine how we thought about each other or how we viewed each other. You're very open about your faith, about manhood. The first conversation we had, and I think why we continue to to conversate so much is I never met you in person, but we've only talked over Zoom. And I think we both, but then, 20 minutes I felt that same feeling I felt around opening up with men that I've known for sometimes 5, 10, 20, 15 years, which is very seldom that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in our conversations as mature, so, I want you to kind of, expound upon that a little bit. Like, you're very open about manhood, faith. I've heard a lot of, the stuff that you've talked about in different aspects. So how does healthy masculinity look to you today? How does that look? How do you go forward and how does that look to you? How do you go forth and display that as an example?
Yeah. I'll tell you how it started and how I arrived to this place. When I talked about my teammate in the tragic event, one of the very first things I did when I got out of sports is I actually went into a inpatient. I checked into an inpatient in California. And the reason why I checked in was because I realized I had a battle with pain pills. When that happened with my teammate, it just so happened a couple weeks later, I had an injury and it gave me some pain pills. And that year also we went 2-14. And then the Ravens went down to New Orleans, and I'm from Louisiana, and they won a Super Bowl. And I was with them 5 years prior to. So all these things were just piling up on top of each other. Teammate, tragic event, previous team won a Super Bowl. I was with them for 5 years. I'm on the heels of like I'm about to retire. And at that moment, I realized, not then, but when I went through therapy, I realized it wasn't about if I was going to deal with that, it was a matter of how I was going to deal with it. And it just happened that was my coping mechanism. This perfect storm met. And I realized through having other people in my life that I shared it with, I was like, dude, and I ended up going into inpatient. I got out of sports. And during that time, it really showed me the power in being able to be transparent and open and just being vulnerable with the right people. I want to let just the right people, right? Your group. Um, about, hey man, here's where I'm at and here's what I'm battling and dealing with. And I'll share this story that also happened too. A while back ago, we had something that happened with my house and the windows got knocked out from a storm. And my man's group that I'm a part of, I reached out because I realized I couldn't fix the window. One of my buddies asked me for my address. He comes over to the house. That joker got a 20-foot ladder. He got all the tools from Home Depot. We put the plywood up and everything. So we move on with the day, and I didn't think anything about it. And he sends in the video message, he sends in a text, a video, and he says, hey man, Edgar, I want to thank you for saying, hey man, I need help. That's made me realize in how much of my life I need to start asking for help. Because you asked for help to fix this window. Like I need to start thinking about it in other aspects of my life. I need to start asking for help. So that situation and then going through therapy, but as I got out of it, it made me start to understand the importance of being able to show up to say, hey man, I'm battling right now. I'm navigating through this. And I've also realized along that journey, by me doing that, it showed people how they can be able to do the same. I've created a safe space for them that they can be able to do the same if they choose to. And to that as well, I realized I needed to cut the time in half. Jay-Z and Kanye they got an old album called Watch the Throne. And there's a song on it called New Day. And basically Jay-Z is rapping to his son and he's saying my only job is to cut the time in half. Before football, before the speaker and coach, I'm a husband and a father. And I have a younger son. And I always think, man, how can I cut the time in half with him? And giving him and showing him a healthy way to communicate, hey man, I'm hurt right now and I'm bothered. But I gotta do it to him. I gotta show him, right? And that happened last year. He got out of school and he had a rough day at school and he got in the car and he was crying. And when he got in the car, he wasn't crying right away. He was like, hey dad, what's up? I was like, what's up, man? Tell me one thing that was good about your day. And he started talking and he started crying. Now, when he started crying, right away, I wanted to kind of get out of the school parking lot, but I had a moment and God reminded me, hey, man, you need to sit in this for a little bit. And I said, hey, bro, tell me what's going on. And he shared with me what was going on. And after we did it, I was like, hey, bro, thank you so much for sharing it with me. I appreciate it. That took a lot. And he was like, yeah, man. He was like, that took a lot. Missing his 2 front teeth. He's like, yeah, Dad, that took a lot. But to me, in that moment, I was teaching him, hey, you can share what's going on. And to me, that's being able to plant seeds in him that will allow him to be able to show up to be a better father, a better colleague, a better husband, and whatever these other roles it is in his life. And a true man to me is not to show up and say you strong, but it's to show up and say, hey, man, I'm bothered. I'm hurt right now. Todd, you hurt my feelings 2 weeks ago when we had this meeting. It's how I feel right now. I can respect that. I can appreciate that. So that's how I define this whole masculinity thing of being strong.
Yeah, man, that's dude. I've spoken about that over the last few years. I have 2 sons, grown adult sons now,
Mhm.
and I feel like myself, along with so many other men, have made the mistake of rushing them to manhood. Um, as opposed to like what the example that you just gave, man, I
Mhm.
wish I was that type of father when my boys were young, as opposed to you got to be tough, don't cry, suck it up, all of those things that, we learned when we were growing up. I didn't have a father in my life, but my older brother and all of the older men, it was all about being tough and you got to suck it up and you got to don't cry, you don't show emotion and so on and so forth. And so to hear you say that, today, that's how you engage with your son when he's having a rough day, man. That's you talking about living the example, living what you speak about, man. That's something that I think we all, especially as men, need to embrace this idea that manhood is not associated with toughness and strength and all that
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah.
Because we do irreparable damage, I think, to our sons when we teach them that at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, that you got to be tough. You don't show emotion. You don't cry. And especially when the repercussion is, a slap upside the head, a push in the chest, all the things that we've learned over the years through our own experiences about what manhood is. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
good
And
on you
yeah.
for that. And I think we need to engage in conversations like this with our squad, with our village, with our men group about, how do we really define manhood, regardless of, what we thought it was in our past and what was
Mm.
taught to us, as young men. How do we define it now, not just for our sons, but for this entire generation that's coming up behind us.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I want to add on that, Kara. I have 2 daughters, and Kara, and I feel exactly the same way. Raising my 2 daughters who are older, 24 and 29, and it is so many things that I wish I would have done differently, and I think a lot of us do. And to hear you say, like, I didn't have those bad day conversations in the car. It was like more, I'll be honest with you, it was, what is wrong with you? Like, and even as they got older and teenagers, it was like, hey, you have all these things. Why are you upset? Why
Right.
are you miserable? And I think it's just more than just how we raise our sons, it's how we show our children in general and how we
Mhm.
raise generations of what masculinity looks like. And I would tell you, for me, we've had this conversation, and I know we've we've exchanged kind of literary things, but the reason why I wrote my first book is, and I wanted to ask you this too, Edgar, like, how freeing is it to be a person who can be a former NFL player, can be someone who talks to their son and be public in talking about mental health and faith and fatherhood. And I felt like writing my first book and letting that all out, talking about mental and physical abuse and talking about how I felt so vulnerable in times of my life. And also I still consider myself masculine and can go out there and do things that men do and all of
Mhm.
these things. I could chop a tree down, but I'm also someone that is okay with looking my daughters in the eye, which I just did. I texted my daughter yesterday, my 24-year-old. She lives in Birmingham, and she was like, "Hey, how was your day?" And I said, "It wasn't a good day.
Mhm.
No, it was." But I didn't get to those conversations until they left my house.
Mhm.
And that's where I feel now, some days I feel kind of low about that, but I'm blessed to have them still in my life and have communication with them and be able to have two girls who are able to talk to me and not have any barriers in between that. But, I think what you're doing and how you just define that will probably be one of the most powerful pieces of, I know for it's so many powerful pieces, but, I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Man, I appreciate you all for sharing and how y'all show up as fathers as well. Because it's one of the roles I can see that we don't take lightly. I don't take it lightly, and I have to remind myself on how important their role is because I have a son and I have daughters as well. And I would like to digress and go back for a second as well. There's a time and a place for me to show up and do exactly what a man needs. If we in the 7-Eleven and somebody comes slap you on your head, Todd, I ain't trying to say Kumar, y'all right now. We're going to
No,
deal
we
with that
going at it,
joker
bro.
and do whatever we do. And then, then we'll talk about the rest later. We get down a little bit with them. But then too, I tell you what, and I would love for you all to dive more into this, Todd and K Wright, and text me and let me know if you see it. Man, the more I get into my Bible, it's just so much that stands out. Now, even if you don't read the Bible, the one story that people are familiar with is the story of Samson. Strongest man, strong. Samson was tearing stuff up. Like when I read the story in Samson, when I heard about the story of Samson, I thought that Samson had sex with Delilah. But it's not one verse that I've seen that said he did it. Now, if Homeboy did it on the back end, maybe he did, but I didn't see a verse that said that. When you read the story about Samson, who was the strongest man, he did so much with his strength. It wasn't the battles that took Samson out. It was what Samson found rest in. He found rest in Delilah. Like he actually laid on his head on Delilah and like stayed there. And it made me think when I read this story, as men, the battles we fight, what do we find our rest in? Like when we're tired, Samson was just tired. He was physically and mentally just exhausted because he had been fighting so much. And as men, we're fighting in all these different roles, whether it's running our business or working for a company, or a husband, with father, and more importantly, just taking care of yourself. Like when you get tired, like what do you find your rest in? Who do you go rest in? And do you have people in your life that can handle what you pouring out? Man, I remember as a kid, my dad let me mow the yard. He was in the back, I was in the front. Now I'm pushing this lawnmower and it run out of gas. Okay, right. It run out of gas. I get the big red gas can. I'm trying to pour the gas in the lawnmower and it spill all over the place. And I'm thinking to myself, man, my dad about to get on to me. So I look around and I see this white styrofoam Sonic cup. And I'm thinking to myself, if I can get this fuel in the styrofoam cup, I can then take this small cup and pour it in the lawnmower. Man, I start pouring that fuel in that styrofoam cup. And boy, that cup dissolved so fast, it melted it. And my daddy come around the corner, he was like, boy, what you doing? I'm like, Daddy, I thought if I poured the fuel inside the styrofoam cup, I could then pour the fuel inside the lawnmower. My daddy said to me, he said, there are certain containers that was built to not hold fuel. Man, when he said that to me, that still stays with me right now because in our lives, we have to ask ourselves this question. Couple questions. One, do you have people in your life that they can handle the fuel you pouring out?
Mm.
And are you pouring into somebody right now that as soon as you tell them about what you're going through or what you're trying to build or your vision or your goals, they start dissolving, man.
Yeah.
And I continue to realize this, like there are certain things in my life that people I love and I care about that I can't pour that fuel inside them. But I can go talk to K Wright about that. I can go talk to Todd. He can handle that diesel I'm about to pour out right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the question, you spark another question is, am I the type of cup that could handle, the fuel from that my friends and my colleagues and the people that's important to me are pouring into?
Yeah.
And part of the answer to that question from me is, do I have the ability to listen, to be non-judgmental, to stay curious, and to help my friend, and I'm gonna say Todd, in a way that he desires my help, and not in a way where I'm judging him and I'm telling him you need to do this. Because I'll be honest with you, man. Anytime I start pouring into one of my friends or anybody, and they say the first thing out of their mouth is you need to, they done lost me already, man. And what they say might be true. You might be right. I do need to, but when I've found so much peace, man, so much solace in not being judgmental about almost anything in life. I've just really learned to see things as they are and not put a label on it as good or bad or this. And it really helps me, not only with coaching clients, but definitely with friends and certainly with all three of my kids. I have a daughter as well. And because I used to be a big, you need to do this. And now, man, I'm listening, I'm processing, I'm staying curious, I'm not judging. So that's a huge thing, man, is not only do we have people in our lives that can receive the fuel that we're given, but am I the type of person that can receive your fuel without disintegrating?
Without disintegrating, because I'm not. I mean, I talked to my mama a couple weeks ago, and I called to check up on her, and she was telling me about everybody at the house that's been passing away. And I was like, Mom, we're going to have to talk about something else, because this fuel you pouring out ain't. and I've this is full disclaimer now. I'm always on this journey of discovering and learning. And as I continue to study and grow and learn, I've realized, I saw somebody put this up. It was a book I read, and they talked about there's 3 levels of conversations that you can have on a day-to-day basis. And you may be talking to one person, and they can give you those 3 levels of conversations. One is a practical conversation. So practical will be, man, I've been working this job and I've been dealing with some stuff with my boss, and they're looking for a solution. That will be practical. An emotional conversation would be, I've been working this job. I've been dealing with something with my boss. He's been pissing me off. I'm about to go into this Monday morning meeting. I'm about to say something to him. So in that, I probably would empathize more with them. Hey, that must be hard. Tell me more about that. They're letting out their emotions. The third one is a social conversation. Hey, man, my boss has been bothering me. Not only that, they've been pissing me off and irritating me. Hey, you been seeing what's been going on with them Cowboys? You see what they did in the draft? So like they totally pivot out of that, and now like it's a social conversation. And I've realized, like, when you're talking to people, if you're ever uncertain about what they need, you just ask the question, man, do you need for me to listen right now, or do you need advice? And most of the time people just be like, man, I just need you to listen right now, because I know I've given advice and I've gotten exactly what you said, Curry. They'd be like, man, I ain't asked you for all that. Yeah, you're right. You didn't ask for that. Like, why did I even say that, right?
Yeah. And the damage come when people don't tell you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That you're that fuel that they don't need. And cause I tell you, I had to learn that. I've been my wife 26, 27 years. I had to learn that. So now when she comes home and she starts going on about job or whatever it is, those are the 2 questions, Edgar, I ask. Do you need me to listen? Cause some of us, cause me, I ain't gonna lie, I naturally revert to giving advice.
Yeah.
It is a super bad habit I have. So yeah, so I definitely relate with that. Definitely.
So hey, as we get ready to wrap up here, Edgar, man, you've had a storied career. You continue to make an impact in lots of different ways with what you're doing. Not only your book, but with the lit code. What would you say to your 18, 19, 20-year-old self? What advice would you give, going back if you wanted, to end up where you are today and have a successful career? I'll tell you, I always answer this. People ask me this question as well. And I mostly answer with, I wouldn't have anything to say. I like the way my life turned out, the bumps and bruises that I took. I've since kind of revisited and I do have some advice for myself, but I'm interested in what advice you would have for your younger self.
2, 1, make sure you keep your word to yourself when nobody is watching and paying attention. Keeping your word to yourself helps out in so many ways in life, with self-confidence, when it comes to a lot of different parts of our lives. A lot of times we keep our word to people, but we don't keep our same commitment to ourselves. So making sure you're keeping your word to yourself, and whatever your commitments are, whatever your goals are, when no one is watching you, like in the dark hours when no one is paying attention. Number 2, don't get away from the quality of questions. When I look at my life now, one of the things I try to be intentional of is not wasting people's time. So I've created a folder that has just a list of questions. So regardless of whoever I get in front of, they're going to know that I came in prepared and I value their time. And when I was 18, 19, at that point in time, I just got to a point that I felt like I just knew it all. And now when I look at one of the things I pick back up on is the power of quality questions. And when I'm around certain people that sail different waters, have been in different places, being able to ask them certain questions so I can continue to grow, to learn, identify blind spots, and hopefully not make the same mistakes that they have made. And when you look at children, when you look at police officers, when you look at lawyers, you look at doctors, the one thing that all of them have in common is they're always asking questions. Now, our kids may be trying to push the envelope a little bit, especially if they get on. My 17-year-old, she asking questions, and I think she's just trying to straight up challenge her dad right now. But the one thing, when you look at those individuals, like, they really ask a lot of questions. And to me, questions are a compass. Questions help us get back on track. So 1, make sure you keep your word to yourself. In addition to keeping your commitments to people, you say you're going to do it. You say you're going to take care of it. But also make sure you keep your word to yourself and what you said you're going to do for yourself. And then number 2, don't get away from asking questions and picking people's, making sure you value people's time if they're in front of you.
Yeah. Sound advice, man. I think for any young
Yeah.
person and certainly for any person of any age today, but definitely appreciate that.
I appreciate y'all.
Absolutely.
What time?
So
What would you say? What was the 18, 19? Wright, you shared. I think you did share. Like you said, you revisited. What was a piece of it? This is for both of you all. What is the piece of advice you would give to the 18 and 19-year-old? And I'm gonna ask y'all this question as well. For men that's been in different spaces and industries and the waters y'all have sailed and been in that I have yet to go in, what piece of advice would you give to me?
Yeah. So I think, I've kind of revisited my thoughts about my 18, 19-year-old self. And I think the thing that I realized I would say to my younger self is, man, dream big, but focus small. Right. It's okay to have high aspirations and want to be, the president of the United States, the chief master of the Air Force, an attorney, whatever. But you got to focus on the important, the small things right in front of you, brilliance and the basics. Right. like in your case, right? You can want to make it to the NFL, but you need to focus on tackling and running and doing the small things, being in the weight room. So, I think sometimes I realized in my career, man, I got so far, I was so focused on the future that I forgot about taking care of the present.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, for me, that's tough. I've always had trouble answering that question because, my 18, 19-year-old self, man, if I could go back and talk to my 18, 19-year-old self, it would be almost on the lines what I still tell myself today. Believe in yourself, believe you can. The road ahead is going to be hard. The challenges are going to be tough, but the barriers are not insurmountable. And that's what I would see because at 18, 19, I wasn't looking toward the future, nor was I looking 20 feet in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more of, it's sad, I look back and I think about this. At 18, 19, I was settled on my life being this, that was, at 19, this was all my life was going to be. This is it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to kind of exist and get by and try to navigate myself through the spaces that I can to make sure that I'm safe enough to get a check and do whatever I need to do. It wasn't dream big. It just wasn't. And I think I would tell myself that you are more than others have said you are.
Mm.
And that you can dream big. I would definitely influence myself to think beyond 100 meters in front of me. So, and I think about that all the time because it wasn't until my mid-20s that I got the confidence to actually do those things that was able to allow me to fail fast forward often and learn and be comfortable with that kind of cycle of living.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to what Wright said. I think a curious person is going to be the person who lives fast, fail, move forward, and kind of comes back and learn and keep getting up and moving forward. So I didn't learn curiosity until probably my middle 20s that made me go after things that 18 I thought was absolutely impossible.
And I would say to the second part of your question, Edgar, about, what advice would we give to somebody like yourself that maybe hasn't experienced, some of the things that we have is exactly that, man, is stay curious and stay open to learning and growing no matter, what the environment is. And I think you've done really, really well already in that. So, that's, it might be, affirmation of what you're already doing from an advice standpoint. And then the other thing, man, is, continue being a good human being, right? Sometimes we put so much emphasis on all these skills and being able to do this and all this type of stuff. And we forget about just the importance, man, of being a good human being, man, and taking care of people and going out of your way for the ones that you love. And even sometimes for strangers, because karma is real, man. I attribute a lot of my success not to I was the most skilled or I was the most qualified or I was the most ready, but I really do believe that some of the things that came to me is directly related to the things that I've done for people in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to be a good person, trying to be a good human being and take care of others and do the small things that and I haven't always been that type of person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to give the impression that, I've been a saint. I've been a devil for a great part of my life. I've done some devilish things, but as I've grown, man, I've really, really focused on, how can I wake up every day and be a better human being to the people around me, the people that I love, and then things will come back to you. You'll be shocked at how much stuff comes back to you when you sow good seeds, right? This whole idea of you reap what you sow, man,
Yeah.
it's real.
It's
If
real.
you sow bad seeds, then bad things will come back to you. If you sow good seeds, then those same good things will eventually come back to you.
Yeah.
So, that's the practical advice I would have for you, brother.
And I appreciate that. Character, character is currency.
Yeah.
And I
It's
would just
go ahead,
go
Todd.
ahead. No, I said I would end with, the advice I would give you is the three buckets that I always look at things. And I've been following this for about 6 or 7 years, and it kind of is the way I kind of see. And back to your fuel analogy, pouring the right fuel into these three. I see anything as in three rings, right? And sometimes we can focus too much energy to bat and put the fuel into the bat, too much fuel into one ring. I think internal to us is the friends and family. That's say, friends and family around us, anything. And sometimes we will look for the admiration and the things from friends and family, that we want. And then I think that second ring is admirers. Those are people that reach out to you, right? They see what Edgar's doing on LinkedIn. And then I think that third ring is strangers. For me, and just me, when I am out trying to be curious and trying to make sure that I'm pouring fuel into the right, I'm always going from out to in. I know who my friends and family are, but I'm always trying to be curious and trying to find the strangers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to turn the admirers into friends and family, but I'm trying to go out all the time to say, who are these people? The world is so endless. How can I go out and start? And that's what you're doing. You talked about pouring the fuel into the right cup. So for me, it's the friends and family, because I just had this conversation with an entrepreneur yesterday. They were frustrated that no one was logging on to their Friday podcast, right? Like no one was coming on to their, and they're like, I got all these friends, I got all this family I send this out to. And I'm like, your expectations are wrong. If you're doing this just to find the admiration of just that group of people, then you're in it for the wrong purpose, right?
Yeah.
So I think the way you have already explained what you have done, I think you were just putting things, you're always, I was a stranger to you until 4 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think, we've moved from stranger into someone that, we admire and we can move in. So I just think sometimes when you're looking for that validation of what you're doing is right, it doesn't come from the inner circle all the time. And I think you explained that with your fuel analogy very well. So that's the way I kind of see everything. I love my friends to death, but 99% of my friends are never going to buy anything I sell. So I have really no expectation for them to be jumping up and down the services I provide. If I can sell it to a stranger and a stranger can say, I have found value in what you are providing me, honestly, the feeling is 10 times greater for me, because I've taken a totally unknown person in this world and I've transformed something for them that they have found value in.
Yeah.
And it's genuine and concern. So I will tell you, when I see you, Edgar, I see you operating already like that. And I just say, continue to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You can build another business. It's hard to replace great friendships.
Yeah.
I look at it the same, like, man, certain friendships is just, hey man, be boys and just remove the business stuff. I mean, if it comes, it comes. If not, I'm just grateful to have you in my life as a great friend. So thank you so much for you gentlemen sharing that.
Absolutely. Hey, Edgar, man, this has been amazingly powerful. I'm looking forward to connecting with you more. I'll make sure I look you up the next time I'm in the Dallas area. But I love to, pick your brain a little bit more, outside of the podcast. But man, just thank you so much for the legacy, not only that you left for current and aspiring NFL players, but for all of us with the work that you're doing outside of the NFL. If you want to know more about Edgar and his story, you can look him up on LinkedIn. It's Jones Edgar. But if you listen to this podcast, when you look him up, you'll be able to find him. You can also check him out at the Lit Code, www.litcode.com. He also has his book. We didn't get to talk about his book, but check him out. The Underdog Story 64. You can find it on Amazon. But man, we really appreciate you. And we wanted to give you the floor one last time if you had any parting shots or parting comments for our audience.
I don't. I feel like I
yeah.
I don't want to say anything else because complexity is the enemy of execution. Cheesecake Factory got too much on the menu, so I feel like we gave them enough.
Yeah.
Just here's to you all, Todd and Wright. Just hopefully y'all let me come back on another episode. And then we can just give a little bit more. So hopefully y'all welcome me back. But thank y'all. Appreciate it.
We love to have you back, man, and we appreciate you. And you're right. You fed us enough for today. Again, this is hey, teammates, this has been 2 Nights and a Mic with our special guest, Edgar Jones. I'm K. Wright. That's Todd Simmons. This podcast, as always, is brought to you by Columbia Southern University. So if you're interested in furthering your educational journey, look us up online, www.columbiasouthern.edu. And a special shout out to our producer, Harry Kibbe, for bringing us, on the scene and helping us, run this podcast. Great job, my man, Harry. So again, Edgar, thank you. Todd, anything else for our audience before we roll out today?
Absolutely not. I think you'll just be on the lookout for the jewels that are going to be dropping. We're going to give you a whole lot of 10-carat rings out of this one.
Harry, what's going on? I didn't even know Harry's.
Yeah, man, I'm sorry. I don't like to get in their way.
I appreciate you, Aaron.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you. Before we get off, I heard y'all talk about two things that it still has my attention. One, y'all talked about clubs. Todd, you asked K. Wright about some clubs that he brought, and then y'all talked about a cigar. And I think I was looking at buying a cigar. I forgot what I put it down on my notes. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to put a date together, K. Wright, to go down to Dallas.
Yeah, we coming down, man, and we're going to go to the Red Phone booth. We do it all, brother.
All right. Sounds good.